Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. Please let me know if there's issues with the audio, and so it begins. Celestial temptations and venturing into the interdimensional. And in this episode, I wanted to provide a commentary on the advancement of creaturehood, and how the existential situation we are in is one where there is 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and we turned nowhere into now here through the development and the expressionism of language. And when a human being talks about the interdimensional, it is working under a premise that reality is multidimensional. And when we wonder about how reality is multidimensional, we have to at least, to some degree, ground the perception from a starting point. First of all, our understanding of multidimensionality is through mathematics to some degree, and so it's as if there was one dimension and then there was another. Do you see? So it's originating from one perspective, and then it's like the additional dimensions of it. I have thought about the interdimensional. I have thought about the journey of our species in the space-time continuum. And personally, I feel that we will become let me say it this way, that right now it's like singular physical framework. We are considering we are a physical self in a physical world. Even though there is the mind, we don't know what the mind is, and we treat imagination as if it's not real until it's acted upon. In my visions of the world, I have concluded that we will eventually reach a point, whether we are creating a multidimensional system and entering it, or we are already in a multidimensional system and we are realizing it. Whichever way we access first, eventually there will come a relationship with different dimensions, and really this is what the interdimensional points to. Right now, on this planet, there are human beings that are not just communicating or receiving communication from what is in front of their eyes, and there is a celestial temptation, and I've wondered about this. I've wondered about this in various ways, as if like, okay, are we a species on a rock looking at the stars so long that we in some sense want to be among them? Or is it in some sense that when we look at this world and wonder what is moving, what is intelligence, or even Fermi's paradox, where Fermi's like, where are the aliens if the universe is so old? So it's as if there's sometimes, I'll say it like this, that I have looked at different perspectives, and I have seen some people who they feel they're communicating to aliens. On YouTube you can see videos, and in like the Mount Shasta area in America. And I have also seen some people who think they are aliens, as if wondering why should there be a sort of sovereign attention and awareness to a world this vast, And it's really about mystery, It's as if I was saying this in in the Discord group yesterday that if an extraterrestrial landed on Earth, and imagine you're walking in the park and an extraterrestrial just lands just from the sky, just like, drops to the ground and just is there standing in front of you. It's like that sense of awe, that sense of whoa, what's going on, that sense of mystery and unknown. To some degree in ancient mysticism, when they went to find their true self and their real self, it was a similar level of unknown awe or wonder as the unknown, wonder in the presence of meeting the unknown. And of course, human beings, you see, we are physically acknowledging we are in like one dimension, but our minds, our intelligence doesn't function in one dimension. In front of our eyes, time is just going forth, but behind our eyes, we can remember the past as if it was like whatever happened yesterday could be accessed now. So it's as if the mind has a greater freedom than the body. Now, the way I came to I've spoken about this in other talks of mine, is that I've said, all right, where's the world we find in front of our eyes, call it the outer realms, and then when somebody closes their eyes, anybody who's listening to me right now, you can do this, just close your eyes and remember something or visualize something, and you'll be fascinated that your eyelids are closed, there isn't light entering that inner space, but you can see something when your eyes are closed. And that is really the beginning fascination of wondering that if we are interdimensional, how does this idea integrate into society? And where is the human urge of being a position in the world? Where is it going in some sense? There's a very beautiful name, I think it's in all languages. For example, in Italian, there's the term stella. There's in Farsi, for a girl's name, there is setare, which means star, So it's as if human beings have, in some sense, named each other after the celestial, There's so many people who they are named after prophets and religious archetypes, but I have yet to meet a person named Earth. Imagine it's like on your birth certificate, Earth, and last name, Milky Way guy. Or first name planet, last name Earth, It's like, did planet Earth just walk into the room, In our inner realms, we can still close our eyes and see, and that content is happening somewhere. I personally consider that imagination is like a room that is, or I'll say it this way, the physical reality is a room inside the room of the mind. And the room of the mind is closer to the unconditional than the room of the body. When we wonder about physical properties, first of all, it's all about the context and concept. When anybody looks at anything, or if anybody's trying to understand anything, if you just get the concept and you don't have the context, it's as if somebody gave you something and you don't know where to put it. If you have the context and you don't have the concept, then you're left to either being an explorer and finding the concept, or in some sense, you don't know where to look in a world so vast, in a context that is, in that context. and they are of course simultaneous. It's as if like there is an object, like anything we see, it's like it comes across as an object, but the way we understand it's an object is a subject. So it's like when somebody says this is an object, that word object is actually a subject, but it is pointing to a physical framework. So I thought, all right, we're a species on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We can close our eyes and still see something. That is a sort of relationship we have with another dimension of ourselves. And human beings, of course, are, how would I say it? It's like there's certain points about the context that give away clues and bring up questions, and there's certain points about how we're being a concept in the moment that suggest clues and suggest that there's something more going on here. Now, if we look at, let's say, the concept of self, that means right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm using the online alias Mr.Within, but in reality, I'm a self of some kind. Now, this self, the things I notice about it is, of course, relevant again to the context, but the thing I notice about the sense of self is that every day I wake up, even though it's the same me, how I feel about me and how I feel about what has happened and what will happen is different. So there is something that, even though we're acting like everything's happening in one dimension and there's no need to ask questions, as if the observable universe is enough, but every day that we wake up, there is a subjective change of the self. So we are a changing subjective self. Now, when we look at the object, right, objects and things change, but the way the body changes, it is so delicate, it is so gentle, and its changes are happening over time, that when a person wakes up, like they don't feel that much their body has changed. They still feel there's still maybe their energy levels and sensation, there's like fluctuations there. But really, when a person wakes up, it's like, I have the same body, I'm still this physical being here, right? It's as if the changes are minuscule. So what this is suggesting is that there is a dimension to this human intelligence of ours where it is subjectively changing quicker and than the objective change. Now, if our attention goes to the world, we ask, why is there a changing subject moving an object in a location that is so vast that the edge of the sky is limitless, and there is so many ways things can happen in this world? Sometimes I think that if our ancestors were somehow still awake in the realm and they saw us behaving like them, they would be like, oh my god, what are the future generations doing, acting like us? We've already lived that view. We've already been there, done that. How about you? You see? So like, it's one of those things where the future will always be, have access. It's, what it is? It's as if the history is like, it's like how Andy Warhol had this quote where he said, when you go to the edge, you see things that you couldn't see before. And so it's as if the future, we're constantly walking towards it as a species, getting closer, and the future generations are always closer to the edge, of let's say the future than the past. So they will see things we can't, Now, when bringing dimensions into this objective world where a subjective self is moving a part of this landscape, and how there's future and memory, it's as if like prior to making the human being multidimensional, we can start subjectively and say that if the human being is in a world, so there's a self in a world, if the human being is in a world and that world has space, and in some sense there is matter in the space, and then as matter changes in space, to our memories we conceive the notion of time, and time is going forward. Albert Einstein has this incredible quote. He says, we created time, so everything doesn't happen at once, all at once. So when we think about could space be multidimensional, and think of the word interdimensional being a multidimensional reality where the dimensions can have a relationship with one another. That means imagine you cut a cake into different pieces, but you didn't separate the key pieces, you just cut it with a knife. That's interdimensional. If you separate the pieces and hand like slices away, you know, excuse me, when you cut it with a knife and the pieces of the cake haven't been moved yet, that's interdimensional. Let's say relationships. And then in some sense when the thing is separate, you know, that's where it moves beyond the interdimensional, where the dimensions are standing on their own. And then if you in some sense like you cut a piece of cake and then you cut that piece of cake into smaller pieces of cake. It's as if I'm taking the qualities that are attributed to a world and the qualities that are attributed to a self, and I am wondering if they were multidimensional, what would it mean? For example, I said space. If space was multidimensional, it would imply that we're on one side of a coin and there's like different kinds of space, even though we think space is just the singular emptiness. If we thought about matter, at least we know that matter is multidimensional in the sense of the development of chemistry and the periodic table, you know, and also physics prior to chemistry. There's not only different states of matter, there's different types of matter. But ultimately, when we have the idea of atoms, it's as if like, you know, it's like, of course, it's like we break down a particle, we see smaller particles, we break down those particles, we see smaller particles, and eventually we reach a point where we can't see anything. So matter is multidimensional pretty much. Now we come to think of time, which is how matter is changing in space. And if time is multidimensional, and we have clues of like ancient mystics and human beings and various human personalities that realize that the personality was kept in motion and movement, and the moment they become still and silent, it's as if it's one moment. Do you know? That means the mystical awareness was that it's like one moment in every moment. But you can say the modern awareness of our modernity, it's multiple moments in one moment. So there can be different senses of time, not only in accordance to Einstein's time dilation, but also like not just that time, you know, like light curves and there's a sort of time difference. These three can be seen as multidimensional. If we see a multidimensional, it opens up room with wondering of different possibilities. It's like a person who their body is made of different elements of the periodic table, even though we're primarily carbon-based life forms, but there's so many different chemicals that are part of us. And it's as if suddenly when you wonder about the multidimensionality of matter, it's as if thinking that every element in the periodic table has its own consciousness. You know? That means all hydrogen atoms are aware of each other. When it comes to time, one can think that, alright, I've closed my eyes, I'm remembering who I was yesterday. Now, is that a different self than who I am right now that is remembering it? Do you see? It's as if the ability we have in accordance to memory and our mindhood, we actually have a sort of storehouse of various versions of ourselves so far in this life. You know, and when they say the point of life is to live it, I've heard a lot of people say that. Well, it in some sense is saying the point of life is endlessly exploring the different selves you will be. Rather than holding on to the truth of a certain moment. It's as if it's an ever-changing, and so are we the ever-changing. Now, when I think about the self, even though the self is in a world where there's space, matter, time, one quality of the self that is not there, and if we say that the world, like if we are old school, like how in traditional times chemistry class was short and they saw 5 elements: earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Ether was seen as space, of course, but to some, ether was consciousness. So it's as if our attention is like an element in the periodic table that's not recorded, but it's the element viewing all the other elements. Now, when it comes to a sense of watcher, it's as if when right now as I'm speaking, if I ask myself, all right, who is speaking, right, I notice that prior to me saying words and prior to my body and voice box moving, there is an attention that's just being the space. That means it's like my body feels like it's in my mind, and my mind feels like the whole space of my awareness that my senses grant. So it's as if the body is inside its own creation or inside its own reception. It's an expression inside its own reception. Because I am somebody who feels that the highest summit of knowledge is the unknown is unknown, for me it's as if there's an unknown watcher that is being the whole moment, where whatever moves in it, it has a choice to select, to identify. We have this view that free will is like this particle in a field, and the particle moves on its own and changes the field. But if we have this notion where it's as if we are a field of awareness, and this field intelligently selects, so it's as if rather than free will being specialized or being made specific to just what the person does, it's as if free will is all over the space and it's a selection. It's as if we have free will over our whole space of awareness. But it's the tip of the iceberg appears as like a person moving. Now, if the self that is in the world begins treating itself as multidimensional, something very fascinating happens. Not only ancient wisdom becomes clarified, but it's that there's a saying that says everybody is fighting a battle you cannot see, and it's another way of saying everybody is inside an inner realm that we cannot see in the outer realm. That means if you see person A and person B, they see each other in the park, and person A is talking to person B and person B is talking to person A, that conversation is based on how person A is in their own inner realm first, and then walking in the outer realms in the park, person B is also in their own inner realms and walking in the outer realms, and when they speak, their inner realms find an opportunity to share, leading to the co-creation of a third reality. So it's as if no two people have ever understood each other, but in their agreements they have created a world where they both can understand. Now, if there is an inner life, if there is a hidden self, that means, I think everybody is aware of this. When we walk in society or in any room, as the Japanese have a saying, like the man is the room he's in, we are not our honest self. Let me tell you why. Because it's once dimensions are added, right? Then one has to acknowledge those dimensions. So if you go into a hall where there's like a performance going on, a concert, right? You don't go on stage and like, it's like, give me the microphone. You don't do that, right? So the way the room is set gives you a possibility of how the self can function. Now, if we have an ability when we talk to others to co-create a world, our relationship with the interdimensional can come in two ways, where the worlds, like we create another dimension and then we have a relationship with it, or there are other dimensions and we have a relationship with it. So, this takes my attention to this point, that the self has an ability to, in the outer realms, experience itself as a creation, and behind its eyes, experience itself as a creator. Now, if we become interstellar, if we are suddenly in a city inside space, imagine you're a child born on a city inside space, like in outer space beyond the orbit. It's as if you would be way more inclined, or let's say you were a parent of that child, you would be way more inclined to give celestial names, right? And it's as if when we are among the stars, we feel we are among the stars. We are. There's sort of celestial context to our being. You know what it is? There's this notion that man was in a cave, and in his process of evolution, he stepped out of that cave. And it's as if I feel the story of humanity that we're telling ourselves, that we're just this that we see in the outer realms, is like a cave, and the species will eventually step out of this cave. When we look at the outer realms, we find that a person sees other people, and other people communicate. So there's an interaction of like an interdimensional interaction between like one's own inner realm and other people's inner realm and an outer realm, a trio of dimensions, dimensions interacting. Now, if a person closes their eyes, or let's say you are closer to the Native American shamanic view and you found yourself in a moment where there was intensity or some sort of challenge, and you closed your eyes and you asked for the assistance of the ancestors, of your ancestors. You see, that's something that modern humanity has disconnected with, because the behavior of a person becomes their memory. And if a person has a lot of, let's say, dishonorable moments in their memory, it's as if they stop caring for how they came about to be who they are. So if you're a person and you've closed your eyes and you're in an intense situation or a moment, and you suddenly see that your ancestry is behind you, your ancestry is standing there watching, it's as if that's a sort of interdimensional contact with unknown variables behind your eyes. There was a quote that said, "We don't see how others are, we see how we are in them." I gotta paint the context more concrete. Let's say that there's a person A, and this person A notices that they're in the outer realms in one physical world, as if this is a multiplayer online game with one physical map, and we all log into it in the morning when we wake up, and we're in the same map as others, but every player behind their eyes is like beyond the screen of what they are. Now, let's say person A communicates to someone in purpose, let's say person B, in the outer realms where we're considering a singular physical dimension, one physical map, right? The person communicates. Now, person B, in some sense, is, let's say, says something to this person. I don't know, let's say person B says, remember yourself, to person A, and then person B goes along into a different location in the space-time continuum in the physical map, and now person A is just standing there, and he suddenly sees, let's say, a picture of person B, even though person B is not there, and suddenly in the inner realms the voice of person B animates. So the challenge we find in interdimensional communication and contact is first a discrimination of the dimensions we're in, then a responsibility of the creative dimension, of the creator-based dimensions behind our eyes. So it's a suggestion that what is happening in the outer realms in one dimension is echoing behind our eyes. Now, let's say person A suddenly goes into a different moment, walks into somewhere completely different, and they, in their inner realms behind their eyes, let's say they're in a park and they close their eyes, and when they close their eyes they see, for example, another figure. Let's say they see a light figure, a bright light figure, right? And that bright light figure says, remember yourself, right? It's as if one can tell that interdimensional, let's say that inner realm experience with an intelligent phenomena or noumenon in the inner realms, it's like it has echoes, it has certain roots in the outer realms. So it could be that the ancient mystics that went into caves to meditate, they were trying to stay in a moment or in a phase of silence and a phase of not having influences of intelligence from one dimension, like a renunciation of the material realm, of their outer realm, to suddenly realize how the inner realm is happening beyond, the archetypes they're familiar with. If we are, what it is, it's like, again, two rooms. In one room, we are just the created. In the second room, in the room of the mind, that invisible room, whether your eyes are open or closed, the visual, let's say, abstract construct can be there. Right now, as I'm talking, I'm visualizing a blue cube in the sky, and my eyes are open and I'm visualizing it, and when I close my eyes, I can still visualize the blue cube and also the sky, right? There was the trio of the body, mind, soul. And the body, physical dimension, objective dimension, the mind, the subjective dimension, and the soul was the watcher of both simultaneously, beyond both. As if the yin-yang circle is beyond, like the white and black of the yin-yang, which infinitely go within one another. And to have a relationship with an intelligent form, in the outer realms it's very easy to be certain of it, but in the inner realms, unless one knows what they are putting into the moment, they can't tell, right? You can't tell if it's like, let's say somebody is saying, hey, I'm speaking to an alien right now, you know, in my inner realms, you know. And so it's as if that alien could be like a past memory of themselves that has reshaped or reanimated. It can be a visualization, it can be an emotion that wants to be released in some sort of form. But ultimately, it's as if it comes down to the inner viewer, to the viewer of reality, whether it's inside or outside, whether it's within us or without us. In a book I wrote years ago called Cationic Imprints, I shared this concept of extraterrestrial contact being a co-creation. And in some sense, if human beings really want to see physical aliens, you know, it's like a movie where it's as if when you're young, the movie's like too intense for you. You know, let's say a movie that is like a scary movie. When you're young, you don't know what to do with that context, you know, with those concepts in that specific context. You know, but when you suddenly grow up, what was overwhelming and intense for you goes away. And it could be that the species is going to grow up and it's going to mature beyond having everything just be in one singular way, because it's easier and it takes less energy. You know, the unknown is something that I would say for a long time, the relationship of our species with it has been fear. Why? Because it's like when it got dark back in the day, when it got dark back in the day, it was as if like, I don't see anything, what's going to happen? And there were predators and roaming around in the forest, you know. So it's like, which is easier to survive, in a world you can see or a world you can't see but know it's there? And the species, as I would say, retaliated against this fear through exploration. And the nature of exploration often is that you're alone and then you find something and you bring back the finding. If the human psychology surpasses its fear of multidimensionality, and what's fascinating is that we don't have this fear when it comes to the concept of multitasking, right? Like if you say to someone you're a multidimensional being, they'll be like, whoa, But if you're like, hey man, in one dimension you're writing, in one dimension, you're speaking, you're drawing, it's like that doesn't freak us out, you know? Or let's say somebody's listening to music and going for a jog. It's like that's really multidimensionality right there. And Immanuel Kant has this saying I'm going to read for you, actually. So this is an essay on what Immanuel Kant has said about unity of consciousness. Immanuel Kant says, this is an essay on him, on his work. By unity of consciousness, Kant seems to have the following in mind. I am conscious not only of single experiences, but of a great many experiences at the same time. The same is true of actions. I can do and be conscious of doing a number of actions all the same time. In addition to such synchronic unity, many global representations, as we called them, display temporal unity. You know what it is? It's like while we're being one body, we can be aware of the different parts of the body. Now, if we consider that greater dimensions are also part of our body of perception, we will have less fear in exploring it. It's like suddenly realizing you could have moved in a way you haven't. You haven't yet. Or you hadn't before. Imagine a world where we human beings had started worshipping birds, and because we worshipped birds, it's as if nobody was allowed to use their hands. We were only using our heads and our feet, And imagine suddenly somebody realized, we can use our hands, and it's as if that awareness to another dimension of like the being is multidimensional. The being has hands, but it's not using them. So it's as if like when you use it, you get access to dimensions you didn't know there were there before, or you can engage previously known dimensions in new unknown ways. I would say sometimes creativity feels like a new idea, and sometimes it feels like a new angle on old ideas. And technology can advance to such a degree in the future where people may be able to even look like aliens. I envision something that in the future in a nightclub, it's like sitting at the bar, you're going to see somebody who has like the head of Anubis from like Egyptian mythology. You know what I mean? It's as if like we can change what we are, and in changing it, part of that change, it could be different dimensions or different influences from different times. And if we are multidimensional, that has the significance of that implication is it's like we have never been just who we know we are. It's like behind our eyes, a self is creating a world, and in front of our eyes, a world is creating a self. Now, the question in front of our eyes is the world creating a multidimensional self, and the question behind our eyes is the self creating a multidimensional world. And just the ability of a creature in a world to fathom greater dimensions. I mean, that was an update. Evolutionary privilege. You know, and let's say there are invisible beings. We look at this world and we see that the world led to the creation of a physical individual being, and let's say we wonder, okay, what if there's a sort of, again, yin-yang at work, and that the world has made invisible collective beings. That means, imagine, like, in the future there's extraterrestrial contact, and like a group of aliens land on the ground, but when they speak, there's a voice speaking through all of them in a synchronized way. It's as if like a collective space is controlling 5 extraterrestrial bodies, right? So it's as if then we would have to consider how do we have a relationship with intelligent collective space. And aside from co-creation, I don't see what else it could be, you know. Co-creation or just a singularization. It's as if like the terrestrial extraterrestrial game finishes the moment we realize there is a field of intelligence that surpasses shapes but is moving them. And it's all about an attachment to the personality. If a person is convinced that they're a specific shape, you know, then in their inner realms, they're leaving the room to communicate just to other shapes, right? It's as if like how many people metaphysically oriented, or let's say even in the New Age community, are trying to communicate with just space without any content. And it's like usually people are trying to see angels, demons, aliens, whatever, you know. Gods, for example, in India. It's like how many people are actually there content with like the space being the truth prior to what's moving in it. And this is one of the biggest, I would say, mysteries of humanity, where what do we do with what we are while we are? There was a phase in my life where I had a unique dream. I've talked about this in other talks, where I think it was 2013 maybe, where in the dream, pretty much it's in the morning, and I'm a person I've experienced a lot of sleep paralysis to a point where I'm not startled by it anymore. And there was a in the dream. So what happens is, it's in the morning. I noticed that it's as if like my mind has woken up earlier than my body. So I see my body in the bed just asleep, and my attention is starting from like where my eyes are, but my eyes are closed. And I hear a word in a dream. So imagine in a dream that's like, or in a way where the body's asleep, the mind is awake, I hear a word, just a random word in that dream state. The word is Lida, and I say this word, I know exactly its spelling in that moment, and it's like the word, like the sound of it, and I just say it. The moment I say it, I experience in my inner realms, like in that moment, a projection into a space, like something that appears to me as outer space, and there's a gigantic stone wall, and there's an inverted triangle cave in that stone wall. And from that moment on, I come back, and as I'm coming back, the ceiling of my room, it's kind of like cubic and liquid, like how you would drop a drop of water would hit like a still pond and make ripples, but it was like the ceiling was rippling like that, but it was also cubic. It was cubic in the sense where it was like cubes going up and down, a sort of geometrical. So it was as if like I saw something in the dream, the stone wall in space, and then I saw there was geometry, like waving geometry, and then I'm back in my room in my moment, and I just I just get up and like I put my hands on my head and I'm like, what just happened? You know, that sort of feeling. And from there on, I was way more inclined to the concept of celestial and whatnot, and I started having a growing affinity for Andromeda. The Andromeda is our neighboring galaxy, where in billions of years our galaxy will intersect it. Some people call it Milkometa. I don't like that name. I don't understand why we need to bring milk into the cosmos, you know, into cosmology. But I started having a relationship with and some unique events happened, and I asked around from certain people. It was a new Agean period of my life. A lot of synchronicities happening and whatnot. And somebody told me that it was your universal self contacting you. And to me, it was fascinating, thinking as if, wow, it's as if there's, you know, little old me, you know, just here, and then there's a universal me, you know, and then if you get it, and, you know, this was before I got acquainted with yoga and really the wisdom you find in Vedanta. And then there is a self that even surpasses time and is inconceivable, and it's like this changeless truth of the changing world, you know. You know, it's kind of like a film projector that projects a film on the wall, let's say a white wall, and in that film there's a, let's say, DVD playing of like a character. You know, I would see the movie Matrix when I was young, like that. And so imagine a character on that projection in the wall suddenly becomes conscious and is like, what's going on? And for a moment realizes that it's outside. That means it's neither the character in the film being projected on the wall, it is neither the empty wall, and it is neither the projector, which is beyond the film of life. Do you know? And so you realize you're watching, do you know, all the dimensions that the watcher has extended through. In Gnosticism, there was this very interesting idea, and Gnostics have a similarity to yogis, you know, where there were some yogis that saw this material realm as a dream, and Gnostics had this view that matter was evil and whatnot, right? Which is, I mean, I don't fully agree with that, but they had this view that matter was evil, and so that there was a light, and so it's as if our light had extended into the material realm, and this light needs to be re-extracted and then consciously used beyond the material realm, a sort of like extracting your own light from the world, or extracting how an attributeless watcher has spread itself through attributes, then wondering why it's not content. You know, so it was a sort of restoration of how the intelligence has extended into phenomena, and then it's coming back to a singular point, and then from that singular point there's a new authorization of how one can be multidimensional. And this world is supremely fascinating. Why? Because we interact with so many things. Do you know? It's as if you see there's also this urge to express, right? That means the earliest artwork is like a handprint on a cave, you know, as if something wanted to be shared so that the future could see it. Honestly, I'm stalling here. Hold on, guys. Oh, universe, how shall you speak? There's an outer realm, there's an inner realm. In the outer realm, there's certain opportunities of mobility and movement. We are a thing, and we interact with other things, and we move as a thing inside a bigger thing where we're calling the world. This is the domain of objects and how objects have meaning. If we wonder about the inner realms and how subjects have meaning, there's a level of subjects that are reflecting the outer realms and how objects have been. If we were wondering about how a human being can see a subject that has nothing to do with objects, that subject would not have content. So we can say that the inner viewer is being, at least through conception, can be acknowledged as a subject independent of any object. Now we know that there is energy at work, and so when we think of like how is an object being an object, we're saying that there's an energy that cannot be created or destroyed but changes from form to form. Now in the inner realms there is this changing of form to form, but still the mystery of an energy that has never changed stands, right? Now a human being, from their eyes, when they look at the outer realms, they are creating memories. Memories are standing in like a pitch black space. That means, I don't know, like close your eyes and remember something. It's as if like it's somewhere, the imagination or the memory, but it's not anywhere, you know. It's not like a location, it's like non-locally being seen. In the inner realms, various shapes and archetypes can arise. A person can make any inanimate image animate. So in some sense, it is imbuing life by the nature of instantaneously seeing it, imbuing life into it. Just like a child plays with a toy and thinks it's the toy, it's imbuing its own life force into an inanimate object and making it animate. If we go through, let's say, levels, like there's levels to human civilization. First level, we were like unconscious animals, and then we noticed we can join hunter-gathering tribes and whatnot. Second level, we started, that communication went further, and communication began becoming independent of rather just communicating to something, just an expression on its own, as if the communication is it's its own position, not rather than being given to a position to be received. So the attention is imbuing life into, let's say when one remembers something, an echo of an object. So this attention that has access to an outer realm and an inner realm, in the inner realm can project various shapes and animate them and have a relationship with them. If the person becomes effortless, or finds a moment where there is effortlessness, or how Lao Tzu says action through inaction, and content in the inner realm, subjective events begin taking place and the person is just watching them, a realization about the nature of the subjects coming and going in the inner realms makes one realize that even if they saw an entity in the inner realms, it is prone to change and fluctuation. It is prone to changing. So if there is truly an intelligence that is different than humanity, and let's say there is an invisible extraterrestrial, or whatever you want to call it, collective mind, this invisible collective mind, our way of contact, so it's as if physical extraterrestrial contact, you go shake the hand of the alien, you know, invisible extraterrestrial contact, or contact with something that is just a field of intelligence, this advantage we have as just a viewer, this attributeless viewer, or how the Vedas say the seer of the seen is unseen, this viewer will be toured, will be in some sense guided by that collective field. So it's as if what we think is, let's say, interdimensional, sort of an interdimensional contact with an invisible collective being, would be us forgetting our reality and animating inside the universe of that other being, in the sense where it's as if we are being guided and into a world that we did not create. Do you know? So it's a relationship with memory that is keeping us fixed into a specific meaning of being a specific something. If the relationship with our memory becomes preferenceless, where the person is just watching, you're in that watcher state, then the content that comes in that as the watcher, in some sense it would be like a drone moving in projections, again, of projections in the inner realm of not one's own mind, you know. Now, if one considers a universal self, the extraterrestrials are inside us, so in some sense there's never been terrestrial, extraterrestrial. It's as if like a universe that is aware of itself, and some parts of it have become aware of themselves, not realizing they're actually the whole thing aware of itself. So if we're more inclined to the geometry we find in religious texts of a singular truth, then the concept of having the relationship or interacting with something goes away when it's all like one intelligence. But if we consider that we are more than our shape and how we're an object and subject, then that viewer has a privilege to perceive other subjects and objects where we consider they're unfamiliar, or they are foreign, or they are, let's say, you know, alien to us. So it's as if when the species develops an ability to watch the world rather than be in the world and then watch it, or how there was this saying actually from Christ where he would say to be in the world but not of it, as if we are in it, but we realize that which is aware that's in it is not of it. It's as if like you know what it is, it's like you're sitting inside a car and you don't know that it's a car. You step outside of the car and you realize you were never in the car, you know, or you were never just limited to being in the car, in the vehicle of, you know, life formhood. Celestial temptation suggests cultural evolution beyond how we want everything to look like what's happening on the planet. And The celestial temptation may cause people to want to communicate with that which is beyond them. That means whether you call it spirituality or metaphysics, it's as if there's this physical entity that has a relationship with how it's being physical that surpasses the physical dimensions. I mean, what other definition of spiritual can there be? It's like the spirit is not defined by matter, and it's not defined by the subject. Because if the moment it suddenly is not beyond the object and subject, you see. So it's as if there's, let's call it the beyond state, and those who access this beyond state can have a relationship beyond whatever story their intelligence has told them so far. We're all swimming through all the information we have accumulated so far from our senses. It's as if nobody is really, think of it this way, that there's everything you have seen in this life is there in your subconscious mind, but the conscious mind doesn't have access to the subconscious because it is separating its relationship with the collective unconscious by being something specific. It's like somebody who is in a, let's say, party who has a specific expectation on how things could go suddenly suffers when the expectation isn't met. But if the person is flowing, like that drunken martial art master style, martial arts style, it's as if the moment is alive prior to our ideological framework of it. And to establish a relationship with that life, that means you're watching the life, and then it's like you're just left as the presence of the moment. That means it's like an instant of attention and energy, experience and existence being just instantly there as their own truth, as the only truth. Because everything changes, what can we get convinced by? The only thing that we can be certain of is that we are changelessly watching change. Because if we were changing through the change, we wouldn't know we changed. You see what I mean? So there's something watching the world change within our intelligence. And I'm just suggesting that in the future, the species may require to begin establishing an ability to retaliate against challenges or potentially extraterrestrial challenges of, let's say, an extraterrestrial lands and it doesn't have a mouth. How would we communicate to it? Imagine there's an invisible space that is being extraterrestrial. How do we communicate with it? Imagine there is an inner realm extraterrestrial invasion. Right, as if people's psychology are changing. So how would we retaliate as a species that is carrying our own banner, even though it's a changing world? So the retaliation would be to, in some sense, have a percentage of the population to begin training into realizing that which cannot change, or how should I say, that which cannot be touched as a component of one's intelligence. It's like an alien landed down and the yogi's like, yo buddy, it's like we're all the same thing, it's like, get out of here. It's as if, like, imagine the extraterrestrials land and we're like, are you enlightened? And they make some weird alien noise and we're like, yeah, that seems like a no. Whatever our journey into the potential multidimensionality of reality is going to be like, or how we venture into the interdimensional, the unknown, we require a basic relationship with our known self and our unknown self. The unknown self, I would say, you're just attention being the whole moment. Your known self is what is through effort of attention just becoming single pointed moving. There's Napoleon Bonaparte, this French emperor. There's this story, not a story, but there's this note about him that the way he would remember things was that in his inner realms he had this drawer cabinet, like this drawer table or something. And so it's as if when he wanted to think about military strategy, he would open that drawer and forget anything. If he wanted to think about, like, let's say, political affairs inside the country, like, that would be another drawer he would open. And he had the ability to go to sleep at any time. This is like a recorded about Napoleon. So it's suggesting a human being that not only has an ability to access multiple dimensions and to organize them through some sort of image framework he gave to himself or to his compartmentalization process, and also having the ability to look at different dimensions, having the ability to just concentrate. That means we not only need to have an ability to see a framework, we need to have an ability to zoom in and out of this framework. And the zooming in and out, when you, for example, do it with a camera or with your phone's camera, there's a limit. So it reaches a limit of perception. So it's like when we zoom into something, we reach a limit of perception that could be spoken about, you know. Yeah, so that goes beyond the language threshold, and when we zoom out, we reach a point where we're like, what can we say? The universe is just here, you know what I mean? It's like it surpasses any sort of verb we can give to it, you know, or so there's a sort of spectrum of not only you being able to create a framework over life and then capture its meaning that way, but also an ability to zoom in on certain moments and make them as significant as the whole moment, or zoom out and make something less significant than other moments. So once the species has this inner realm sort of training, or this training in the inner realms, and we become subjectively independent, not just objectively independent. Objectively we are, we're just creatures walking around, right? Everybody's body is like, nobody expect others to come and move their body, right? But when it comes to subjective events, there is an expectation, but that expectation may in the future go, and there will come the true you know, it's fascinating. In my work, I talk about that I pretty much look at human beings and I just see advanced communicators. It's as if we're in a universe. We're the most intelligent part of what's happening, so we are the most advanced communication of the universal sector in this part of the universal sector. So we are like the advanced. So now we are conditional in regards to a physical self in a physical world. It's like that's the level of our training. But when it becomes non-physical self in non-physical world, the permission of that could be infinite. So it's as if in order to protect the species from any sort of interdimensional relationship, I would say human beings need to study these 4 dimensions. That means whoever you are in this life, wonder about these 4 ways that reality can be seen. One way that reality can be seen is the void. It's like you have to have an ability as just the watcher of emptiness. The Zen masters went towards this. Another ability you need to have, or let's say another view that you need to wonder about, is singularity. If everything is singular, if everything is one thing, or if everything is one moment, and those who were religious, they went towards that. Now, the second thing is you need to wonder about duality, and to wonder about duality, the body is already giving you that view, a dualistic view of a self in a world, and there's night and day, you know, and there's like positive actions, negative actions. And then it comes to them infinite. This void, singular, and the dual can be in some sense fathomed. We fathom the singular in accordance to like all the parts of the cake being there. We can fathom the duality of the cake as if you cut the cake into 2 pieces only. You can fathom the cake being completely eaten and there is no more cake, you know. We can fathom the void in regards to the absence of the phenomena that is there. And then, when it comes to the infinite, we cannot visualize. our visualization reaches a point, and then we intrinsically know that it's like it's way more infinite than our finite perception. The infinite will be our relationship with energy and its expression. The dualistic, I would say, is how we are receiving energy based on the lens we're given, this physical lens of existence, by the biological existence. So it's as if I'm saying, there is a void self, discover it. There is a singular self, discover it. There is a dualistic self, discover it. And there is an infinite self, discover it. And in the mystical search, of course, anybody who wonders about what's going on here will eventually step out of the linguistic simulation. That means language is like a cloud over the whole world, and it's like when you pilot beyond that cloud, and the only way you can is really understanding the singular and the void. So you know what it is? It's as if before we become infinite, we need to master 0, master 1, and master 2. These 3 dimensions. And then the infinite is left. It's like the void, the singular, and the dual are all working together, so the infinite can be discovered. There is so much of this world that suggests it's beyond the human framework. And so when the species has a contentment not to just only, think about if you had mastered these 4 dimensions, you would be able to be in any moment in the space-time continuum as attention, as a sort of awareness being attention, and you're content with anything that goes away or is dismissed out of the realm, or anything that's destroyed. Then you find contentment with, in some sense, everything being one thing, or whatever that has happened so far all being one moment. That means you're content with singular phenomenology, and then it comes to the dualistic, as if you have finished your Aeonian reincarnative battle, with the chaos and order, as if chaos and order have given you your final teachings and whatnot. And so when it comes to the infinite, being able to see infinite truths, it's as if you saw a void truth, the truth that was never there. You saw a singular truth, a truth that was always there. You saw a dualistic truth, a truth that was endlessly changing. And then you saw an infinite truth, a truth that is so endless that it's as if it can't, it's a truth without, it's a truth, it's an unknown truth, infinite. That means you cannot be a known entity and know it. Anyways, whatever happens to this species, the appreciation of the journey of sight so far on its own is an incredible power source. Terence McKenna spoke about an archaic revival, and people say that history repeats itself, and we know that prior to a certain point that we started documenting history and reality, it was unknown. So it's as if we are waiting for the archaic revival of the unknown. It's like, you can even see it from a dualistic framework, as if this world is a sine wave, where you end up, like when the sine wave, when the wave is going towards the trough, It is as if individual known entities, and when it goes to the other side of the curve, the opposite of the curve, the peak, it in some sense becomes unknown, collective or unknown world. So it's like we're taking turns being known creatures and unknown worlds. And if the mystery of energy surpasses any sort of fathomable framework, it means that there's only experiential truth. So anybody wanting truth to be for language being truth, it's as if you have not noticed the fascination of what is truly here, you know. The secrets of our eyes surpass the secrets of our memory. And at least what human beings can do is train in different dimensions and advance that way. Anyways, guys, I've reached the end of this talk. And this talk, the intention was to just be a commentary on these themes, on how a creature will advance beyond interactions with dimensions in front of its eyes, and it also will eventually in the future advance beyond interactions of how it can endlessly shift its subjective positioning. You know, it's like finite body, infinite mind, unknown moment. The unknown is the circle that captures the known dimensions of the body and mind, the infinite and the finite. And I guess I'll end the talk here. Thank you for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.